Stop, hier kommt Trump.
Herzlich willkommen bei Achtung Reichelt, live aus Detroit. Es sind nur noch wenige Stunden, dann wählt Amerika, diese älteste und mächtigste Demokratie der Welt. 72% der Deutschen sind der festen Überzeugung, dass Kamala Harris diese Wahl gewinnen wird. Aber hier im Swing State Michigan sieht die Sache ein bisschen anders aus. Donald Trump führt in allen letzten Umfragen in allen Swing States. Wir sprechen heute exklusiv mit einem der engsten Vertrauten von Donald Trump, dem ehemaligen US-Botschafter in Berlin, Ric Grenell, und bringen Ihnen eine Geschichte, die Sie in Deutschland sonst so nicht hören. Herzlich willkommen, Ric Grenell.
Welcome to Detroit.
Thank you.
Although I wish that we were in Grand Rapids, where I was from.
We're close.
We're very close, but this is my home state.
So, as I just said, 72% of Germans expect Kamala Harris to win. What is your take on the election on Tuesday?
Well, if that's the case, I would say the German media have really failed the German people because they're not watching how the Electoral College goes. Look, if we were running for the popular vote, if that's how you won the White House, if that's how you entered 1600 Pennsylvania, then we would be running a different campaign. But that's not the way America works. We have a 270 electoral vote win, and so you concentrate on electoral votes. I think that Donald Trump is poised to win and win solidly and big. I feel much better about the situation than in 2020. I even feel better than in 2016. So I think that if you're watching what's going on in these swing states, if you go to swing states instead of watching polls from newsrooms, you're actually going to see that the people are completely energized for Donald Trump, his economy, closed border, and let's be perfectly clear, ending a war in Europe, ending a war in the Middle East.
So the numbers have turned around in kind of an amazing way in the past days. Donald Trump is ahead now in every single swing state in the latest polls we have seen. How did that turnaround in the polls happen in the past weeks?
Look, Julian, as you know, I'm from California. I live there now. And we know Kamala Harris. The more she talks, the worse it gets. I think one of the key indicators of what's happening is the Los Angeles Times, the largest newspaper in California, a very far left state, the largest newspaper in California that knows her very well, that has reported on her every move, did not endorse her for president. This is historic for the Los Angeles Times. It's shocking for me because they always endorse the Democrat. But she's not getting the typical left media endorsements simply because they know her. She can't speak very well. She has very far left policies that she's now pretending to run from. The more she speaks, the better Donald Trump does.
There were some big stories in the past days that we've seen together here on the campaign trail. Joe Biden calling Donald Trump supporters garbage. Then only a few hours ago, one of the main supporters for Kamala Harris calling women who support Donald Trump weak. How does that reflect on the campaign? Is that a moment of truth? Does that show how they really think about millions of Americans?
You know, what's so important on these stories is that we get them right and that we report on them. There's a real dismissive attitude from the media to not report on all of these vicious attacks that the Biden and the left do against Donald Trump, calling him Hitler, for instance. All I ever hear in the media is a focus on Donald Trump's retorts. Donald Trump is a fighter. But if you call him Hitler, you're going to get a pushback and a critique. And we're thankful for that. We want a fighter. We don't want the condescending elitist left to define us without us pushing back. The media want us to just kind of take the high road and take the punches and go. But that's not realistic. And so it's very offensive to Americans, everyday Americans. The one thing that I think the German media should understand is that working class Americans are overwhelmingly voting for Donald Trump. First and second generation Americans who left totalitarianism, who left fascism to come legally vetted to America, they're overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. He has put together a coalition like none other Republican, maybe similar to a Ronald Reagan coalition. But we know that the left is always going to be very condescending towards us. They're going to make fun of us. They're going to call us names. Usually it's a racist, sexist, homophobe, or the new one, a Russian agent. If you want to end the war in Ukraine and America, if you are focused on peace, literally the newsrooms and the media in America and the left are going to call you a Russian agent. And loving peace shouldn't be partisan. It should be the policy of the greatest country in the history of the world.
We're going to get to the war in Ukraine in a moment. Obviously, you know the German media landscape. The German media is completely freaking out about a possible second Trump term, also calling him an enemy, calling him a fascist, comparing him to Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin at the same time. Why do you think that is? Why are they so scared of a second Trump term in Germany, in German politics, and in the German media?
That's a huge question that we could go on and on for a long time. Look, I think there's a couple of points to make. One, the German media, unlike any other country, I think even worse than American media, are out of touch with the German people. And they regurgitate what the German government line is. They're very much an entity that is far left and just knee-jerk towards what the government wants. So that's one of the first things. The second thing is I think it makes sense for the German media to pretend like things are going to get worse. But they know Donald Trump from the first term. They know that he stood firmly against funding Iran. There was a collective freak out from a whole bunch of elites in Germany about my tweets of saying, hey, German companies don't do business with Iran. When you do business with Iran, you get October 7th.
Yes.
And we've seen that. Hundreds of billions of dollars. Donald Trump was right. We're not holding our breath waiting for Spiegel to come forward and say Donald Trump was right. But the reality is that he was right on Nord Stream 2 as well. He was right on NATO funding. And I think if you're an honest observer, when you step back, you're going to get an impression that Donald Trump actually wants Europe to be West. He wants the Europeans to be much better and to be, with us. And so our policies are to strengthen Germany and to let them know that their partnership is with the West. We want Germany to act more West.
You just said that the German media is big on repeating the government's line. And it's pretty obvious if you followed statements from German politicians, from the administration in the past weeks and months, that the German administration, this administration, wants Kamala Harris to win. Yeah. There are members of the Green Party and members of the Social Democrats right now here in the US actively campaigning for Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
How Olaf Scholz clearly came out in support of Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Annalena Baerbock mocked Donald Trump on Twitter and said, oh, we are not eating cats and dogs here in Germany. How is that going to affect the relationship of Germany and the US in a possible second Trump term?
Well, first of all, I think we're well aware of the Germans who mock Donald Trump and who don't like him. I would say to the German media and the German politicians that you should probably take a page from France. France has been much, much better about dealing with the realities of the situation. No one should be surprised that America and Americans are moving towards wanting leaders who protect them, who put America first. Germany puts Germany first. France puts France first. Don't blame us for wanting to put America first, because we think that when America puts itself first, you have the democracy, the rule of law, capitalism. Those global rules, I think, are better for everyone. I can make the case that having an America first policy is better for the world. It doesn't mean that we don't want allies. Of course we want allies, but we want allies who don't buy energy from Russia through Nord Stream 2. Remember, Chancellor Merkel begged Joe Biden to drop the sanctions, the Trump sanctions on Nord Stream 2. Begged Trump, and Trump said no. Begged Joe Biden, and he said yes. So I think that the German government has to take a step back and realize that what we're trying to do in our warnings about Huawei and closer relationship with China, I think the German government officials need to understand we're trying to be partners where Germany is with the West, solidly with the West, rejecting China as a partner and making moves towards this great alliance. And I would say that France does that. The UK leadership has tried to do that in the past, even with this current government. The Germans should take a lesson there and not try to wag their finger and be condescending towards what the American public chooses as their leaders.
Do you think Angela Merkel and Joe Biden together, by getting rid of these sanctions, had a role in kicking off the war in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Yes, absolutely. I think that was the beginning of the war. Putin invaded under Obama and Merkel and under Biden and Merkel. Remember that. I know technically she was on her way out, but there's no question that her policies on Nord Stream 2 contributed to what was going on. And look, I like Chancellor Merkel. I got along with her. I think she appreciated the fact that we were blunt with her. I've heard her say to President Trump in the past, you know, I appreciate your transparency and honesty. We always know exactly where you stand. And so we just want a partner in Germany. And by the way, I'll add this. The number of German politicians reaching out to me right now is enormous.
Have they called you in the past 4 years, or is that...
No, just recently. The number of German CEOs, German businesses, is incredible. I would say weekly we're talking to, and President Trump has spoken with some German CEOs, very large. I won't name any names, but my point is that I think there's a separation between the German business community and the German government. The German government thinks they control the business community, and I think the business community just says, you can think that, but we're going to do our own thing. The economy of Germany is suffering. They need to be with the West. Yeah. We need to be acting together. And I think Donald Trump absolutely wants to, but at the end of the day, it's up to the German government. Maybe it's up to the German people to demand that their government be more West. But I think we're committed. How many times has America come forward to show our commitment to Germany? We want a Germany that is reflexively with the West, and I don't believe it is right now.
You just mentioned the German business community, which is suffering from enormously high energy prices. During the first Trump term, when you were ambassador in Berlin, the US was offering cheap gas, liquid natural gas, and was rejected. You were personally rejected by the German administration. Now Germany is basically without a clear support of cheap energy after the whole Nord Stream thing failed and Russia invaded Ukraine. Do you think there will be a chance for a renewal of that, for a cheap American energy for a German economy?
Look, I think the reality is that the Trump administration is always going to want to have a better relationship with the German government. It's up to the Germans. The German government listens to the German media, and the German media are extremely woke. And the German public needs to recognize that they can't swallow that messaging hook, line, and sinker. They have to be able to get past that. But the reality, too, is that the German media outlets are behind technology, right? Lots of people in Germany like to read the physical paper. That's old by the time you even pick it up. And so we live in a world that's much more fast-paced. I would hope that we begin to have a German government that understands that their economy is not doing well. They should be with the West, stop pretending like Donald Trump is Hitler, and recognize that we've got great policies. Under Donald Trump, The economies were soaring. People just need to understand that. I know Donald Trump personally, and I've said this before when I was ambassador in Germany, and I wholeheartedly believe it. I think Germany has the potential to be Donald Trump's favorite country. The business communities are incredibly strong. Your business community acts just like American business community. You cannot peel them away. Lufthansa, 12,000 American employees. BMW, Daimler, Bayer. You can go through the whole list of German companies that are ingrained in America. And I think that the German government has never really understood that. The German businesses do, and that's why we keep seeing them reach out to us to say, hey, let's work together.
So after all these insults towards you, towards President Trump, towards you personally, after everything you've warned the German government about, from Nord Stream to a possible Iran deal, after everything you've asked them, pay your 2% for NATO, is there a way back between the German administration and a possible next Trump term? Is there a vision for American-German cooperation?
I wouldn't say a way back, because I don't think we ever left, right? I think there's always been. Look, I have many friends in Germany.
You do?
Many friends.
You do? Because the German media perception would be that you hate Germany.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would say every other day I get a text or a phone call from a friend in Germany. Not all Trump supporters, but people that I met when I was ambassador that I love, that are good friends who have visited me in America, people that I talk to, to get the flavor, still stay in touch. I have many friends in Germany, but I think that there is, unlike any other country, there's a lack of information that flows down to the German public. And I think the public television system there is an atrocious way to get your media.
Yes, it is. I agree.
It's completely one-sided, and the German public is beginning to understand that, but they need to race towards the I'd say responsibility that a consumer of news has. If you like news, you cannot get your news from one source. You have a responsibility to get it from multiple sources and to question everybody. Media is a business now. And so you can't just go to one outlet and think that you're getting the truth. You have a responsibility to go to multiple outlets. And I think, unlike any other country, the Germans tend to believe public television and regurgitate that. And I see it constantly. So in my conversations with Germans, I'm constantly having to say, well, did you see this article? Did you see this? And more times than not, they say, oh, no, I didn't know that. And so I would say that we will always continue as Americans to push the Germans to be closer to America. But for Donald Trump, that means we've got some certain standards that we want the German government to rise up to. I think the German people are ready for it.
What are those standards? Like, what is your expectation? If you're back in office, what is your expectation towards the German government?
To act like you're part of the West, not that you're trying to cozy up to China, for instance, to be partners with the West and to move forward, to not fund Iran, for instance, to not pretend like you can buy your energy from Russia. Look, I see what Chancellor Merkel did in terms of energy. She really put Germany in a terrible position by wanting to stay in power. She grabbed all these Green Party initiatives, really moved, I think, the CDU far away from a conservative party just to be able to stay in power. I don't blame her. She wanted to stay in power. But I think there needs to be a collective review that you don't have enough energy. You're a manufacturing-based economy. You are very close to the United States, and we should act like partners. You're the largest economy in Europe, with the largest economy in America, in the world, in America. We should act like better partners. And again, I go back. The German business community recognizes that. They want that, and the German government needs to catch up.
The biggest story in Europe for 2 years now has been the war in Ukraine. Trump has basically promised to end that war immediately. Do you really believe that is possible? And how would he do it? Like how long would it take?
Look, I've told this story before, and I think that it's an important illustrative story to talk about why we believe Donald Trump can solve these problems fast. There's a American evangelical pastor by the name of Pastor Brunson that was held against their will in Turkey. And President Trump was very clear that we wanted this pastor out. And the diplomatic sides, the State Department, the Foreign Ministry in Turkey couldn't get it done. When it bubbled up into President Trump, he called President Erdogan, greeted him, said, "How are you? Look forward to seeing you at the next NATO meeting. But I'm calling with just a message. I want you to release Pastor Brunson by tomorrow at 12 noon. And if you don't, I'm going to ruin your economy." And Pastor Brunson was released the next day by 12 noon. Why? Not because Donald Trump did anything, but because the Turkish leader, President Erdogan, said, I think he just might do that. There was a credible threat. So Turkey acted. Donald Trump didn't have to act. I think when it comes to the war in Ukraine, it's been going on for a very long time. Americans have been funding with their tax dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. Joe Biden hasn't spoken to Vladimir Putin in more than 3 years. They haven't even spoken. Kamala Harris hasn't spoken with Vladimir Putin through the entire term. This is shocking to the American public. We've got a war in the Middle East funded because Europeans and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wanted to engage with Iran. They now have hundreds of billions of dollars. By the way, we're going to have to peel that money back. But when it comes to Ukraine, I think Mr. Zelensky, Putin, they are going to absolutely make decisions because they know Donald Trump means business. They're going to come to the table. They're going to recognize they've got to solve this. President Trump has been very clear. He wants the killings to stop. He wants peace. We've already delivered peace. President Trump knows how to do it, but it's mainly the partners understand that there are consequences with Donald Trump. Joe Biden just said, no, don't do it. No consequences, no firm decision. There's a difference between a threat and a credible threat.
Will the U.S. funding of the war in Ukraine end on day one of a possible Trump administration? Look, will Europe have to go alone if they still want to fund it?
You're not going to need it because it's going to be over. The war's going to be over under Donald Trump. So you know me, I've been at the State Department for 12 years. I'm a diplomat. I'm going to talk about diplomacy and strong diplomacy. How do we end it through, peaceful means, tariffs, isolation, sanctions. All of those issues are tools of diplomacy. If you want to talk about funding and war, I'm going to make you go talk to the Pentagon. I'm not going to talk like I'm at the Pentagon. I want to be a diplomat. President Trump wants strong diplomacy. By the way, I think Europeans and the left in America have shamefully made fun of tough diplomats. They've contributed to this world where all we ever do is look to the Pentagon for decisions. If you want peace through strength, Julian, is a celebration of the State Department and diplomacy. Of course you need the Pentagon behind you. Of course you need a strong military threat. There's no question about that. But if you don't have tough diplomats, you can't solve these problems peacefully.
You just mentioned tariffs, and you also mentioned cozying up to China. Now, Germany just voted against tariffs in the EU, just voted against tariffs on imported Chinese electric vehicles. The EU voted for it. Germany voted against it because the German economy is completely entangled with the Chinese economy. Do you expect a trade war with China? And what role would you expect Germany to play? How tough should and can Germany be on China?
The German government's own decisions on electric vehicles have put them in a terrible situation. They now are beholden to China. The reason why they don't want tariffs is they think we can't pick this fight. The exact same thinking about Nord Stream 2. Drop the sanctions. We don't want to pick this fight with Russia. But that's weakness. That shows weakness for the largest economy in Europe to be leveraged. China sees that. The German government is afraid and running away. Do you think China is not going to now pound and take advantage? Of course they are. Of course they are. So we don't want to see a trade war. When I was ambassador, I worked very hard with all of the auto industry executives to really push hard. Remember, Europe has huge tariffs on our cars compared to what America has. It's 10 and 2.5. So if you want to talk fair trade or a trade war, it seems to me that it would make sense for America to match Europe, but we're not moving in that direction. We want to be able to have partners and not have this trade war. And I think during the Trump administration, through my conversations with President Trump, we were able to show that the German businesses were investing in America, becoming more like an American company, and that held off on tariffs. It won't be a big surprise to you that the German car makers are already talking to the Trump team to make sure that they continue that. Not the German government, the German business community.
What about this this tariff issue? You just got into a little fight with the German finance minister, Christian Lindner, on X, formerly known as Twitter, about tariffs, and he threatened the US with retaliation. What do you make of that?
Well, my point in telling him is that, look, Christian, you need to talk to your own business community because you're out of step.
Yeah.
And it was clear to me from his tweet that he's not speaking to the German car makers. It's very clear that he has not spoken to them. And he's just being a politician and doing politician things. This goes back, his tweet was the perfect example of how German politicians are completely out of step with the German business community. And I was trying to make that point to him, and of course, he didn't get it.
The German business community, however, is pushing against tariffs on Chinese imports, for example. Since you compared that kind of to Nord Stream 2, what is the worst case scenario if a country like Germany does not stand up to China?
Look, I think that the manufacturing of cars in Germany is going to end. If you don't stand up to China, China's doing a very good job of pushing electric vehicles on the world. And remember, when you look at their labor laws and their environmental laws, they're always going to be able to make something cheaper because they don't have to abide by standards. We in the West have standards. We don't want environmental disasters. We don't want child labor. We want protection for the people who are making products. Those protections are not the same in China, and we can't act like they are.
Slight change of topics. What is your view of the Conservative Party or parties by now in Germany? There's still the CDU, which is doing very well in the polls right now, but there's also the AfD. What is your view of conservatives in Germany? Are they ready to connect with Trump? Are you in touch with them? Are they interested in a possible second Trump term, or are they shying away?
Yeah. Look, I really don't get involved in politics in another country. I'm looking for ways to embolden common sense. And that has always been my thinking. I did this Breitbart interview, and the entire German media and European media completely got it wrong and subscribed opinions on it that I didn't push. The idea is that we want common sense. Common sense can come from the far left party, but it's not coming from the far left party.
Historically.
Well, look, I'm just talking about the United States at this point.
Yeah.
And we have a far left woke Democratic Party that is really proud of the fact that they don't know the difference between a woman and a man. They're really proud of that. We have a Supreme Court justice in America who literally said in front of the world, I'm not a biologist. I can't tell the difference between a woman and a man. That's shocking to most Americans. This idea of sanctuary cities, where you have cities that break federal law and you get protected by that. We want common sense. Common sense used to come from the Democratic Party. This is why Robert Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, who used to be Democrats, have now endorsed President Trump because he has common sense policies. That's what we want to see in Europe. And so when you ask me, am I talking to different parties in Germany? I'm not. I'm watching what's happening because I love the German political scene. But I'm rooting for common sense. Bring back common sense.
You have just mentioned one issue that seems to be huge here in the US and still isn't in Germany, and it's the whole transgender issue. It's men invading women's and girls' sports, locker rooms. Why is that such a big story here?
I don't know why, because it's happening, I think. We've seen women who have worked really hard in their sport get a college scholarship only to come up, when they're the best woman, only to come up short and be, number 2 in the nation because a man who was swimming wasn't doing very well in sport, very mid for men's swimming, decided to become a woman and then moved over to the women's division and dominated. We don't think that that's fair. We don't think that's common sense to have a biological man in women's sports. By the way, this is very clear that what the Trump team's position is, if you're under the age of 18, no child should have permanent surgeries or take medications to alter their body. If you're under the age of 18, we got to protect children. No biological men in women's spaces, in the locker room, in sports. That's pro-woman. And so this is a very big debate right now in America. I think mainly because Kamala Harris, as a Californian, from a politician from San Francisco, the most radical place in America, she is proud about wanting transgendered surgeries for prisoners paid for by American tax dollars. That's not common sense. Democrats are rejecting that. She's now running from that and pretending she wasn't for it. She was clearly for it. We have her on tape. And so she's having a problem because she's on video saying these things about fracking and being woke. And now she's like, oh, that's not me. Well, she's not explaining herself as to when she changed. And so we don't trust her.
Another issue that kind of unites the US and Germany is illegal migration. And Donald Trump promised to stop it here on day one. We have the same issue in Europe and in Germany. Could there be some sort of cooperation, collaboration on that huge issue that kind of defines the future of free Western societies, how many people come into our countries?
Yeah, look, I think that's a great question. I hope that we're getting to that point where we have the Western government's understanding that lots of people, millions, hundreds of millions of people, want to come into our countries because we have capitalism, rule of law, human rights. So of course people want to come into our societies. We can't have an open border. We need to be welcoming, but we need to vet. By the way, the State Department, my beloved State Department, has offices around the world with experts called Foreign Service officers who vet people. They know how to do this. When you allow an open border and you don't vet them, it's an affront to the Foreign Service, who are working hard to figure out how do you look at someone to make sure that they're vetted, they're safe, and that they're people that we want to come into our country. I think the reality is the American system is very generous when it comes to immigration, extremely generous. We let roughly 1 million people a year into the United States to become U.S. citizens. That is something we're proud of. First and second generation Americans who come here legally and who are vetted are part of our fabric, but we have to vet. And when you have a system that doesn't vet people, then chaos is created. And we've learned that from the Europeans. Brexit happened. The European Union became smaller and weaker because they couldn't vet. We don't want that to happen in America.
I want to finish with two more personal questions. This has been
my dog Lola. Are you going to ask about Lola? She's doing very well, by the way.
This has been an insane campaign. Two assassination attempts on Donald Trump. One only missed him by millimeters.
Thank God.
What is your take on this campaign? How have you lived through this campaign of high emotions?
Look, I'm a religious person. I've been praying for President Trump. I think by the grace of God is the reason he's here. They're out to get him. He's an outsider in Washington, and that system in Washington, D.C. is very effective at protecting itself. And I've seen Hunger Games. I've seen what it's like when the Capitol protects itself. We have this problem around the world with capitals that become so powerful and go against the people. So I'm very concerned about it. We need to shake...
Are you concerned about another attempt on his life?
I am. I've talked to President Trump about it.
What does he say?
Look, I won't share my conversations with him, but we've made clear that they're not going to stop. It's terrible, but they're not going to stop. They want to get him because he is the outsider that is changing Washington, and that system absolutely doesn't want to be changed. And so we pray for him. We think God is protecting him. Who knows what the future is? But we need an outsider. We need someone who doesn't care when they're mocked by the media. We need a fighter that fights back against the system. We've got too many problems developing. And so I'm confident that Donald Trump is going to be able to get back in and win on Tuesday. And we're going to do everything we can to clean up the problems in America. And the list is long in terms of what the last 4 years have done to Americans.
Last question. The question probably every German politician and many German journalists care about and worry about. If there is a second Trump term, are we going to see you back in Berlin?
Back in Berlin?
In any role?
Who knows what the future holds? I'm happy in California. I'm fighting really hard. I've been on the campaign trail for weeks. I haven't been home in weeks. I believe in this president. I believe in Donald Trump. And I'm going to do whatever President Trump asks me to do. I've been with him since 2015, and I will continue because he's sacrificing a lot. He doesn't need this, but I'm a patriot. I love America. I believe that we have to make sacrifices, as Ronald Reagan said. And I want to see his policies implemented because it means peace. I mean, look, we have 2 wars, Julian. Massive war in the Middle East and a massive war in Europe. This, for Americans, is unacceptable. We've moved to the point where we are anti-war. We're tired of funding it. I would be remiss if I didn't say we have a $35 trillion national debt. We've got to clean that up. And so getting to the point where we have peace through strength and no wars is exactly where Americans want to go.
Ric Grenell, thank you very much and all the best on the past days of the campaign.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.